to the 19th.
So I'm here today with Trish Thornton. Trish has a podcast that she self-publishes. She's going to tell us about called Growing Up Church. And she also happens to be one of my earliest students at the beginning of my teaching career at the Art Institute in Charlotte. So Trish, tell us about your background and how you got into podcasting.
Okay, so my background, I went to the Art Institute, Charlotte. I graduated with my associate's degree in digital filmmaking and video production. And after graduation, I worked as a production assistant on a few indie films and some commercials. Worked for a short period of time doing infomercials and freelanced as a videographer and editor. And so that's kind of the space that I've occupied as far as my background is concerned. So more so in video. And then how I got into podcasting, I actually kind of just fell into podcasting on my own. My phone literally updated, and the iPhone updated, and there was like a podcasting app, and I was like, oh, what's okay? Let me give it a try. I thought podcasting sounded boring, even though I had never heard of it. So I found a couple podcasts that I really liked, and I really enjoyed the conversations that were had, the way the stories were being told. And I think I was probably just more shocked at how interesting just the storytelling was via audio. And I was sad that I hadn't given it a chance sooner.
So yeah, so you kind of touched on, like why, like how you got into it. So like what was the transition point for you in being from being a podcast listener, like a consumer, to deciding like, well, I really want to be a producer. I want to start my own podcast.
Well, I actually had already started a video series called Trish Plugged In, where I was highlighting different creatives and entrepreneurs, just everyday people that I knew who were creating and doing just awesome work. And so I was like, well, if it's audio, it might be easier because I don't have the video component as well. So I already had a separate Zoom recorder, Zoom H4n recorder. And so I was like, I'll just use that to kind of get started. And I just did a little bit of research and just started working from there, working from that point of like what I already knew, learning how to use Premiere and Adobe Audition, and just kind of taking those tools and just kind of transitioning from that point.
Awesome. So in your progress, so far, tell us a little bit about like how what you've done with podcasting already, and then like the especially some of the best practices that you've learned being a self-publisher, being the person that kind of takes it from idea all the way to publish. What would you share to someone else who is thinking about getting started?
Definitely knowing and understand your purpose for developing your podcast, taking the time to writing out, getting all the information you need to get started, like having a brief summary of your idea so that you're giving clarity to your audience about what this series is about. Starting off from that point is really going to make everything else easier. Getting your cover art, considering what that's going to be like. Once you get all of that work, the rest of it is just easy. You if you already have the technical aspect, but for the most part, you can have great audio, but what are we listening to when we go click on that podcast? So definitely writing out your summary, giving your audience and you some understanding as to where this is going to go initially. And then also just finding your style. Finding your style. So for me, I love like the New York Times Daily. I love This American Life. I love NPR Gimlet podcast. So my first season of my podcast, they kind of sound like that. I give a bit of an intro and then, I'll kind of go into my interview. So knowing the style that's best for you is definitely important. And then I would also say, considering, where you are, being mindful as you're developing your content of the time and resources that you have available. At the time that I started my podcast, I was working a full-time job and I was a one-woman show. So I wanted to make sure that I was consistent. So I needed to make sure that I wasn't biting off more than I could chew, making sure that I'm delivering for my audience as they're going to be showing up for this podcast. And then lastly, just really working with what you have as far as equipment is concerned. I get what they call gas, gear acquisition syndrome, where you want all of the cool and neat audio equipment and camera equipment, but you really need to focus on what do you need? What are you actually going to use to get your content, to get your podcast started? Like, if you can go without this tool, then you don't need it. Get what you need, get what you can afford, and then work from there and build and grow. And then also, even I self-publish using the Anchor app. That also goes with, having the time and the resources, because I work a full-time job. It's a lot easier for me. So I really took time to do my research and to see how this app works. And it really works well, providing me, with even music. I still like to edit using Premiere or Adobe Audition. I'm a little bit more, I know how to use those things, so I use them.
Right.
But yeah, using what you have to get started, not going outside and trying to do too much. You really want to work on being consistent with your podcast, making sure your message is clear and making sure that the audio is clear as well.
That's so good. All right, thanks so much. It's really good to catch up with you, Trish, and look forward to continuing to follow your work.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening. You can listen to more episodes and find resources for teaching podcasting at podcastpedagogy.com. You can email the show at info@podcastpedagogy.com.